Hey, I'm Stephanie Hunt. Welcome to the Cult of Flair, where I chat with creators from all walks of life about the meaning of personal style, fearless individuality, unexpected paths, and insights into finding your flair. Alongside my in-depth interview series, you'll also find snackable short episodes. I do love my snacks. I call these my Flair on the fly. I'll be serving up tips, musings, or insightful nuggets designed to expand your knowledge and to share the flair. Hey, everybody. I'm so excited to introduce my guest today, my friend, Pierce Meehan. Pierce is a groundbreaking artist with a unique vision that merges painting, sculpture, and minimalist design into a completely new genre. Based in Costa Mesa, California, where he brings his creations to life with a fresh perspective inspired by the world of aquaculture. His work has been featured in multiple publications and exhibits around the globe. Growing up in Newport Beach, Pierce draws heavily from Pacific Rim culture and oceanic and agrarian themes. I can't wait to talk about that. Creating works that feel both rooted and modern. In his journey to expand his practice, he's now exploring larger installations, public works, and new mediums. Alongside his studio work, Pierce co-founded Meehan Studios with fellow artist Carlin Meehan, who also happens to be his sister. Together, they provide accessible studio spaces for emerging artists in downtown Santa Ana, fostering a supportive, creative community. Welcome, Pierce.
All right. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. So many of these words and things I want to talk about, but I'm not going to talk about them yet. I first just want to ask you about becoming a creator and how you embraced and first started getting into art. Was it a moment in time? Was it a person? Was it a family? How'd this whole thing start?
Well, so I was always kind of creatively inclined. I mean, our mom always had, we had big concrete floors. We lived in a single-story house in that community we were talking about earlier.
Yeah, and in Bayshores, Newport Beach. Shout out where we raised our kids. That's where you grew up.
We always just say we were like the Weasleys of Newport. It was. But that house had
six kids.
Six kids, 5 boys and a girl. And so my sister had her own room, and all the boys lived in one room with 2 bunk beds and a trundle.
Oh my God,
so it was like a barracks.
Hilarious.
And it was awesome. And so
and you guys didn't resent your sister?
I mean, no, it was a team mentality, so it still is. It's just, she's
I know you are a very
equal
close
but different,
family,
same but different. So that's just how we treat her. She's the best.
She is the best.
I'm
lucky enough to know her too, and I love her. Can't believe that you're both not with me here today.
I know.
Next time.
We'll get her for sure.
Next time, yeah.
She's hard to track down.
Yeah.
She's on the move. And my mom always had giant art supplies, and she also helped. She was a major part of something called Meet the Masters. So in elementary school, and basically we went to public school, but it felt almost like a private school because so many of the parents were so involved. And so we were so fortunate to have that experience. And my mom gave Meet the Masters, so we would collectively as kids sit in the MPR, the multi-purpose room.
Right.
And they would give these big talks on, Van Gogh, Picasso, those types of things. And then you would do art projects in the class as well.
Did your mom bring that program to
Newport? I think
Newport?
she did. I don't want to misquote, so I'm not,
we'll just say
she was heavily involved in that program
instrumental
with a lot of the other
involved.
moms that heavily influenced my aesthetics as well.
Right.
Some
That's
of the
very
super cool mothers and my friends' moms and stuff. But we always had access to art stuff, and our parents we were so lucky. The one thing that our parents really strived to give us was experience. So we were always at museums and traveling a ton, and the exposure. And so I think I always had a creative inclination, but it wasn't until junior year of high school, I had been injured, and so I did Art 1, second semester, and it was like an elective, and I had just a raw ability to draw and do these things. And so I won a scholarship to Laguna College of Art and Design for summer drawing and things like that. And so
which is a
Mrs. Spencer,
great school.
my art teacher, and she's since retired, and I've run into her, and she's so sweet. And
Wait, tell me again, how old were you, or what year?
I was junior year of high school.
Okay.
And then I went from Art 1 to AP Art because I had like a really, natural inclination toward it. And that was with Jody Weissman. And so I just ramped up. And I'd always had an affiliation or an appreciation for, these creative people around, like Yoki, and who's been my creative father since I was a little guy.
You know what? And I did not know that.
Yeah. And so, he's my Yoda. He's in my phone.
Right. Hence the hat, Mucho Aloha.
Yeah.
And he and I don't know him personally, but his daughter is close friends with one of our boys.
You got to get him on
And
here.
I've spoken to him on the phone because I was looking at still trying to, just haven't carved out the time to do a fashion thing. And another mutual friend, John Oswald, put me in touch with him, and he was so encouraging and talked about like where I would find somebody to help me sew, and that's amazing. I love that.
I still go down and see him, at least a couple times a month.
That's so cool.
Go and bug him.
I'm newly motivated to go say hi in person and introduce myself, because I sort of have found myself resisting, going like, I don't want to bother him. This would be embarrassing and cringy, and he's too busy for me. But
his contemporaries are insane. And it's like, Sean Stussy and these guys that, and so I learned from him was actually how to see. Some people walk into rooms and they see people and stuff like that. And for people like Yoki and myself, I guess more it's shapes and colors and things. And it's just, I just see things in a different way. And I didn't realize
you notice things that maybe other people don't notice, or notice them in a different way.
Yeah, hyper detail oriented.
What I'm also loving about you describing and having your parents encourage this so much is that you are also just this really well-rounded person in my mind. Like now I think raising kids,
we try to be.
The kids are, and I'm guilty as a parent, like everybody has to subspecialize so early and decide who you are as a person. Are you an artist? Are you an athlete? Are you this? Are you that? And you weren't, no one is just what they do, but I feel like you were also like surf culture, boat culture, all the aquatic stuff, which informs your sensibility, obviously. But the fact that your parents really, really encouraged it and didn't try to stop you from doing this.
It was definitely, and also
they exposed you to it.
In the environment that we grew up in, we were so lucky to grow up, and our parents worked so hard to provide for us and do all that. I mean, raising 6 kids in Newport Beach is not easy.
The mind boggles.
But we had this bitch in a house that had 2 Sub-Zero giant refrigerators. There was always 2 gallons of milk in there, and it was just run. We had 2 washing dishwashers.
Yeah,
it was just this really cool, cozy home.
And I'm envisioning it, and I feel like that's a home that other kids want to be. I want to meet your mom one day. I'm obsessed with meeting people's mothers. I just am
she's the best. And I still go down. I know we'll get into it, but I go down at least once or twice a week and go make her coffee in the morning. So because I get up really, really, really early. Yeah. So
what
if
time
I
do you
have
get
time, well, I'm off my little cycle right now, but typically 4:30 or 5 every single day. Yeah.
Same here.
Yeah. I can't help it. It's nice to have a little alone
You're making
time.
me feel better about it, because most people act like, oh my gosh, you've been awake since 4:30. So it's almost like I've talked myself into the fact that this is maybe a disorder or there's something wrong with me. It really is just quiet time, and I get more done between 4:30 and 6 in the morning, especially if it's focused work or difficult emails or a writing assignment or something creative, before all the incoming starts coming at you.
It's just nice to have a little bit of alone, quiet time.
Yeah. Do you go to bed early?
I do. If I can be in bed by 7:30 or 8,
so
I'm stoked.
Oh my gosh, I love this.
Never happens, but
I love it. Right.
But I guess going back to that's kind of where it sparked, and then I was able to parlay that into, like I said, AP art in high school, and it was more design based because my focus back then was more clothing and branding, being around surf culture and stuff. And that's when I started to know about guys like Oswald and all these, the Paul Franks, and we were so lucky to be part of that culture. So I credit so much of my entire program to having parents that were supportive of that, but also 2, seeking out mentors. Yoki was a mentor. I had all these other great mentors. I'm definitely the product of the mentor system. I always sought out people that I thought led interesting lives. Yeah. And they tended to be creatives for the most part. Now more so in other industries and stuff, but it's just super great to have guys that I thought lived a cool life and were able to support themselves in a creative way. And to me, that was just the coolest thing.
And even you talking about this is just such a message for anybody who, from the other end of it, take the time to mentor somebody. I love it when someone will reach out to me and say, I have somebody thinking about going into design, but she doesn't know where to start. It's not like I think that I'm the great, knower of all the things, but I feel like I can vividly see the few people in my life that help direct me or help me on the path to where I am. And I want to be able to do that for other people. So thank heavens you had these people.
Totally. And also too, we grew up, my best friend's dad, basically invented the electric boat. So we spent
Duffy.
Yeah.
So
and
good.
We spent so much time in the boat factories and on the boats and that exposure, because my parents weren't super boaty people. We had a whaler. My dad loved it. But that's something that all of my friends, we all collectively found that is our happy place, is just being on the water. It
Yeah.
doesn't matter, sailboat,
Right.
little dinghy, just being on a dock.
Yeah.
It's just
Yeah,
happy
just-
being around
Yeah.
water.
Yeah.
And I wasn't super surfy. I was, but I was slow and not coordinated. And so all my buddies are these fantastic surfers and stuff. And that's where I found myself more so being drawn to the products and the surf shops and being around it. And
Got
that's
it.
where originally I think I fell in love with those surfboards, those big candy colored,
Yes.
beautiful objects that were just
Oh my
shiny
gosh, they
and
just
stuff.
speak
Yeah,
to me.
totally.
And like,
And I-
come paint every piece of furniture and wall in my house.
Totally, to all of us. So that fiberglass and all that stuff was just in my nature.
When did it shift from the first exposure or focus on design, more like fashion industry, to you actually creating your first piece
Okay.
on a canvas or a board or other that someone hung on their wall? And how old were you when that started to evolve or
So
happen?
I had to be out of college because I went to USC. I went to Roski School of Art and Design,
Okay.
and my focus was design. And because at the time, and they still do, they have one of the best
I wish that had been my
direction.
major there. It
Yeah.
wasn't.
Well, now we're getting more and more involved, and there's no reason why they can't compete with UCLA and Art Center and things like that now with the fine arts program. And it's always been kind of a subset. It was lopped together in the same building as the architecture students and stuff.
Okay.
So it was great, but I wasn't fine art based. My sister much more so. She was more into painting and those types of things. I was more design based, but it was also, I was hyper into the theory and understanding it and stuff. And I don't come off as your typical creative because, you know, I am kind of a jock and I grew up with guys that are athletes and stuff,
Yeah.
but I gave a damn. So I was always the guy that, you know, I was in fraternities and all that kind of stuff, but I was, you know, in class, in studio, I loved it because it was time I could have a beer and sit down and be there and understand all the stuff that was going on. And I just loved being around making the stuff. And it wasn't until after school where I really got interested in fine art. And I think it might've been because at the time it was more all about design and branding and that
Right.
stuff, which I did get into, but it was years later when I was working for John at a company called Quipo.
Okay. Oh, right.
I
I
made
don't
my
think I knew
first
you worked for
piece in the stock or in the like warehouse section. And over a weekend because I was using the wrong kind of resins, the wrong stuff, and it just stank up the whole building and stuff. And so it was the first piece I ever made was this black and white piece. And I know where it is right now. It's in a friend's
So how
living
many
room.
years ago would this have been? Like, I can't figure out how
Maybe
old
about
you are.
10,
I don't want you
10
to have
years
to
ago.
say, but
It's
I
okay.
don't know.
I'm
How old are you?
37.
Yeah, I'm like, are
Yeah.
you like 30? Are you 40? I'm trying to figure out when you were at USC. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I graduated at SC in 2010.
Okay, and what fraternity were you?
I was in SAE.
Okay.
I think it's back. It
SA
got kicked
little,
off.
SA little sister.
Yeah. Well, if you went to Newport Harbor, you got jumped into that gang.
Okay.
That's just the way it was.
Jumped
and now,
into the
yeah,
gang.
and now it's
The
Sigma
mean
Chi. They
streets
always
of the
change.
USC
Yeah, totally.
Greek system.
I'm a
fraternity
total
row.
bubble baby, and I totally, you know, I had a great experience.
Yeah.
But I remember going up to like Berkeley or visiting, and I called my dad because SC was the only school I applied to.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I was a singly tracked.
Yeah.
And
Our son Chandler was a little bit that way. We made him apply to more schools, and he was like, fine, I'm just doing this because you're forcing me to, but I don't want to.
I was just, that's the only thing that in my brain was college. That was
Right.
the next step because my exposure was just going to games with my dad and having that
Yeah.
experience and then nostalgia.
Right.
And I'm heavily influenced by nostalgia and those feelings and
Yeah.
stuff. But I remember calling him and I was so pissed because we were walking around Berkeley and I don't mean to curse or anything, but I was like, Dad, it's like fucking Hogwarts up there. And
I
it
love
was-
that you're good.
It was
I'm
so
kind of a
awesome.
problem swearer.
Oh.
I keep, every like year or so, I try
me
to
too
tell
so
myself.
much. But I remember in just the bricks and all that stuff, and it's kind of, you know,
Hogwarts, yeah.
you're just like, man, this is cool.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, why didn't you apply? I was like, I didn't know that was an you know, I
Right.
was just stupidly, right?
Yeah.
But no, and I actually I applied, and then I got waitlisted, and then I ended up taking a full year at OCC.
Okay.
And that's where I really worked with Jeff at Gnocchi, and that's when we created so many parts
Right,
of the
Jeff
brands and
Yokoyama,
different things
right.
and stuff, and that really
I didn't
helped me.
even, I had no idea this back. I love
yeah,
that.
yeah.
Okay, so when did you paint the black and white painting that was like the wrong everything and got
Oh
hung on
my
a wall?
goodness, yeah. So that was nearly 10 years ago. So I've been, but at that time, I was just fascinated with it, and my girlfriend at the time was just like, I just talk about it. And that's the way I am with anybody. If I have an idea, I talk about it at nauseum for them, and then finally they're like, just do it, just make it.
Just shut up and do it.
And so and back then you don't know anything, so you go to different board makers or stuff, or because I had this concept of how do you take, you know, what is California, what is it to me, what's art that I'm interested in and whatnot, and so I didn't see anything, and so I'm one of those people where if I don't see it, I'll go make it or I'll
Yeah.
look into it.
Yeah.
And so it was taking all of that, and with the design background, it's just asking questions. It's how do I put this beautiful experience or this place, this environment on a wall that is in a sophisticated, in a new way. And so for me, it was using those materials. And so I was really interested in it. And so I looked into it, and coming from a design background, you go around and then you ask if anybody can make it. You go to local shapers or whatever, and everyone was like, no, we don't do that. You can't, whatever. So I had to learn how to do it, because I thought maybe I could just pay people to put it together and make it in glass and stuff. And we tried that, and it
you could direct it and somebody else could make it, but that wasn't working.
What I learned from other artists and other people was like, no, you have to know how to do it so you can teach somebody else how to do it. And so I became a master at destroying plastics and foams and going through the wrong stuff and doing it wrong. And then finally I had some guidance from Dan Taylor, gave me some space in his shaping bays, and I would just burn through with the wrong stuff. And eventually he'd walk over and be like, hey, maybe you should slow down that polisher. Maybe you should not do that.
So I'm just going to interject.
Yeah, sorry.
For listeners, viewers who aren't familiar with your style of work, which we'll have, we'll be linking everything and they can see it.
Cool.
But if somebody just landed from ours, explain what your style is, even though I know you have so many of them, but the one I associate you with really is a feeling, and I'm sure I'm going to say it incorrectly, but of like a surfboard. Like with surf resin and wood inlay or whatever.
Yeah. So how I got into that,
how do I articulate that? Because I cannot.
Well, and I still have a hard time explaining. Okay. And again, people ask me all the time, they're like, is it a painting? Is it sculpture?
Yeah.
So it's kind of this blend, but it's a medium that I'm sure people have maybe done it before, but I'd never seen it. But I was so impressed with the finish fetish and all that kind of stuff with, Peter Alexander and
I don't know what the finish. I don't know what the finish fetish is.
It was a giant movement in art, recent art history. Let's say maybe 50s and 60s. I might get that wrong. Where they were using resins, and McCracken out of UCI, who was contemporaries with like Chris Burden and some of these artists. Okay. And they would do these planks, and they were just beautiful pieces, and it was just
just smooth.
Oh yeah. And they're gorgeous. And so I was just always in love with that. But also too, growing up around boats and cars and stuff. My dad was kind of a car guy. And so just being around those old shapes of those old Mercedes and those beautiful, just curves and stuff in that glistening finish.
Colors.
And how they pop. And so I was always super interested in those types of things. But I was also influenced because another good family friend and the Hills, who owned the fuel dock in Newport Harbor, they used to have a tugboat that was 80 feet long that they converted into the family boat. And so we would spend all this time on that. But that was something. I
remember that boat.
And what was so striking and what I've learned since then, really thinking about it, is it's the idea of taking something old and presenting it in a new way, in a new use kind of a thing. And that I've always been, and that's kind of the whole Yoki thing of recycling and upcycling and doing those things.
Right.
So it was, for me, it was
you were
all
like,
of
so
that.
you and he, but we're talking about you right now. We're so ahead of your time, like fashion forward. Because right now, sustainability and upcycling and dead stock and all those things are such buzzwords and so hip. But you were doing this probably before you even knew that you were doing a really good thing.
Yeah,
right?
But it's hard to use that in the medium that I do, because people want to say, oh, it's in. I do use recycled EPS in the foam that we use, but I'm so adverse to greenwashing and the idea of greenwashing, because they're buzzwords and people use them to sell stuff. And so if it's part of the practice, I think that's fantastic. Yeah. It should be. Right. But that should just be the standard. It shouldn't be a selling point of, it's recycled. There's nothing about fiberglass and foam and stuff that's green and sustainable. You go, come on, you're using composite chemicals. Point. It's a chemical reaction. Yeah. But so I was able to use those influences and for me, it was, how do you do that? And so I just asked the questions and started putting some together, and they were so bad and so gross and the wrong colors, and the resins were turning and yellowing and gross and stuff. So it just took trial and error, and finally I came up with a couple of them, and they just, as soon as the first person saw it, they go, holy shit. And they understood the feeling that I was trying to emote.
I didn't know you, and I think the first time I became aware of aware of your work before I became aware of you. Oh. So I went into my favorite store, which it's hard to call it a store because it's much more, like as you know, museum or an art gallery in Newport Beach where people fly in from around the world to visit it. It's been compared to the Guggenheim. It's a store called Amory's. And it's a scary thing to go in there because I tell myself, like, I'm just going in to look, and then you accidentally walk out having potentially spent more money than you imagine spending.
Oh, yeah.
But you see something you can't imagine living without. And when I went in just to sort of see this, I don't like the word curated because it's so overused, but I will say this amazingly curated store and collection of mostly clothing, but also, you know, home things and art. I didn't even see clothing. All I saw were these beautiful, big, colorful, smooth, graphic, hard to call it a painting because I feel like it's a painting, it's a square, it's on canvas, and so it's on a wall, you call it a painting. But I look at it and it doesn't feel like a painting, so it's just an artwork. And I was just stopped in my tracks, like, what is that and who is that? And then I think I didn't really ask about it because I got bogged down probably in clothing, and then went home and was on their social media and found a tag. So that led me to your social media, and then just, again, kind of having a heart attack, but mostly also over the small world of Newport Beach, all of the people that we overlapped with. Because even though you're older than my kids and younger than me, like, we have 1,000 different people in common, and the fact that you grew up in the neighborhood where we raised our kids. And then I reached out to you and had you do some commission work for different clients of mine, and which I'm still doing because I still want to talk to you about more things, but I just am so happy you're here. Let's shift for a bit and talk about travel, because I do think that's something that we share in common, like the love of travel, and I'm curious how you feel about it in terms of informing your sensibility or helping your creativity or all of that.
Well, that was something, and we'll get back to, obviously, I got to give my props to the Amory's girls because they're like my aunties. And
it's so good.
Dawn and Denise have opened the world to me and the clientele. And, you know, a big part of my travel is because, and I'll tell you the whole story about with my dad and the whole thing too.
Yeah, I would love that.
And so they gave me a platform and a place to show the works and stuff like that.
But
let's get back to travel.
No, I'm going to just interrupt you there to say that I feel like you were being humble, and I love people who have humility because I don't love people that don't. That was a very prophetic thing to say, or well, not prophetic. I'm missing my word, but like trying to sound smart and whatever. But Dawn and Denise, the owners of Amory's, are not ones to also just do favors for people they like. They have a very keen eye and an incredible sense of style, and no matter how much they like you, they're not just going to let you hang art in their store. So you're very humble for saying that.
Well, I'm so naive because I first met them because my first job ever was, I think, 14 or 13 washing dishes at a restaurant called Hotcakes, because that's where all the cool guys worked, right? And so I had to get a special permission slip so I could work like the whatever 10 hours a week at first or whatever, and then
a permission slip,
and
that's
so at the time. Paul, I think, was maybe dating or, you know, seeing Denise. So I used to run her dishes when I was little guy.
I didn't even know that.
And so years later, after they'd moved down to the amazing facility that they are now on the water and stuff, it's like a museum. It is so cool. And it's one of the top, it's always rated as one of the top boutiques or
in the world.
You know, retail places in the world.
Yeah.
And their clientele is at the highest level in the world. And I walked in there.
People fly in from Japan and Dubai to shop for them. From them.
Yeah. And it's funny because you'll get a phone call and they're like, hey, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm just at the shop. They're like, hey, you might want to come down. And you go down there and you don't realize who's in there. And you go, oh my God.
Yeah, you're like, this is why I wanted to come down.
Neat. But they, I went in there because when I first started making works, I was like, okay, where's a place that you would want to sell these and whatnot? You know, because galleries, there aren't a lot in Newport or Orange County, really. I mean, they have Peter Blake and some of these more contemporary galleries. So, but for me, I didn't know what, and I just wanted to go in there with an idea of like, do you think people would like this sort of thing? And so I went in there and just talked to Denise, actually, and she goes, oh, that sounds great. And months later, I came in with one. She goes, oh my God, this is exactly what you talked about. And I had no frame of reference of the caliber of people that actually do that or whatnot. And they go, do you mind if we sell one? And I go, and they said, who represents you? And I'm not an artist.
You're
I
like,
was a
me,
designer.
myself, and
I was like, no, I don't do this. I work, you know, I'm not an artist. And so they put one up and it sold. They put one up and it turned into this thing. And so that's why I always have to give them credit with helping start my career.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I will always
I thought it was maybe that
I
was late to the party. I was the only person who didn't know about you.
Oh.
So, okay,
They're
that's
so
amazing.
Sweet. And one year I was able to coincide my meetings in Paris for Fashion Week. And that is an experience with them.
I was going to say,
Yeah.
so Fashion Week in Paris tends to overlay or be close to Design Week in Paris in January.
Yeah.
So I went with a client one year, and it's kind of how I got to know those girls, because I wasn't a big shopper of theirs, but my client was. And we were there at the same time and went out with them one night. I went to this, like, I don't remember if it was Yves Saint Laurent or Valentino, I don't know who it was, but got to go in like a private showing of the models walking down, and then all the international buyers of these incredible high-end, lovely boutiques, like making notes and writing. I was like, how did I even get here?
You walk in
when
a
are they going to
room,
realize I don't belong here?
You walk in a room and it's, it's the gals from the row.
Yes.
And it's them and you go, oh my goodness.
Yep.
You're like, I think I recognize them. They're like, you know who those are.
Yep, they were there.
Okay, yeah.
So fun.
They're sweet. Sorry.
Okay, back to travel.
Yes.
Or no, we're already on travel because we're talking about Paris. I know you go to Japan because you have art events there, but how does travel inform or affect your eye and your creativity and all of that? And what do you love most? Where are your favorite spots?
Well, okay, so I have a terrible habit of traveling kind of only for work, and I need to do it for leisure more, but I just have always, and also I've learned.
Hard to do though.
It is,
as a
but I
business
also get to go to
owner,
cool places. So that's the best part about it.
Right, exactly.
So I love going to New York because I like seeing the energy of the city, and it's so different from home because home is so sleepy and kind of quiet.
Right,
and
suburban, nautical.
Yeah. And I love New York, other than the fact that it's just the energy, I think, more so than anything. And my favorite thing in the world is I go to the MoMA every single time I go.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's one of my favorite things to do. Obviously, Japan and going to Kyoto, and just the sense of calm and peace that you feel walking around.
That's bucket list for me.
Yeah, you gotta go.
I have not been yet, but
I'll give you a list of cool stuff.
Please do.
But also, Europe was really cool. When we were little kids, we did a European vacation, which I don't know how you do that with so many kids.
That's what I was just thinking. How on earth do you drag a family of like 6 kids, 8 total, to Europe?
It was a lot.
And
it was awesome. And at that point too, I was super scared of, like, I think it was when I was at the age when you're like understanding mortality. Oh. And so, like, I was scared of everything because all you're seeing is churches and dead stuff.
Wait, I don't like math. So do the age thing. How old are you in 2020? Or not 2020?
Well, this was
2000. What year was it?
24 years ago.
24 years ago. So you were like 9, 10,
something like that. Yeah,
something like that. Whatever.
Just old enough to start to understand and be scared. Right. You know. But we got to, like I said, the exposure, and so just seeing all that stuff was so great. And I don't know. We just did a trip back east to Martha's or Nantucket, and that was so cool. And I know that it's so, it can be considered a certain way, but it just felt like home. It felt like Balboa Island on steroids. Yeah. And so it was just kind of cool to walk around.
And no matter, I feel like there are a lot of places that someone will say, like, oh, this is too this is too bougie, this is too third world. I don't think I have ever been to a place ever that I haven't not liked, whatever, you know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, it's
like,
experience.
Even if it's a place that I go, okay, I'm not sure that I need to come back, I still am changed by having had the experience and the exposure to whatever you're seeing, the people, the colors, the style, the architecture. I want to go everywhere.
Same. I'm obsessed with that, and I love traveling. And I'm going to Mexico City next week to explore. So
Nick and I were Nick just came back. I'm obsessed with Mexico City.
All right,
I've been twice.
Okay.
Like, I love it. I've been twice so far, meaning I will go back. I love Mexico City.
Well, I guess they have more galleries per capita than any other city in the world.
That wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah.
I did not know that statistic, but it is so it's everything.
They're going through a major cultural revolution because it's the younger people are finding an identity, from what I hear, and friends that are from there.
Okay.
And so they have the old with the brand new, and so it's just it's ripe for creating.
Yeah, the juxtaposition of it, the art scene, the culinary scene, the old architecture. I mean, it's
the history
incredible.
Is just really interesting.
My biggest thing with travel is, if time and money are your finite resources or more finite, it's hard when you have I want to take a trip, or I'm going to take a trip. When I love a place, I want to go back. I'm talking about Mexico City, Marrakesh, Paris. So many places I've been multiple times, and I still want to go back when I know, I want to go to these places I have not yet been before, and it's how to reconcile those two. But if that's my biggest problem, I know that's what
I'm the same
kind of
way.
embarrassing.
But
that's not my biggest problem.
My number one would have to be Japan. I've always had a fascination with it. I think it had to do maybe with, as a young kid, having all these mentors that had a lot of success in Japan and hearing all these stories.
Okay.
And Yoki and these guys telling me all the cool stuff about them. And so I fell in love. And when I had the opportunity to go there, I jumped at it.
Talk to me about that opportunity, because
Okay.
wasn't that specifically for a show, and how did that come to be?
They just called me.
Like,
I
it
think they
wasn't
saw
because
my
you
work
knew
somewhere.
somebody who.
Nope.
That's even a better story.
It was out of the blue cold call, and it was just like, oh, okay.
Wait, so who was it that called you?
It was this group, the management or the guys that I worked with, I think have since gone on to other projects and stuff. But it was the Ron Herman group. So it was like Fred Siegel, here,
Which
or
is
the Ron
just
Herman.
so cool.
It was a group that licensed the Ron Herman group.
Okay.
And they, at the time, had maybe 7 or 8 locations. Now they have like 17 or 20. It's similar to like a Beams or something like that.
Yeah.
And so what they have over there is they have, their stores, but then they have goods, and then they have gallery spaces. And so
I don't know this because I have not been to Japan. So thank you for educating me.
You gotta go.
I know I have not been yet. I'm dying to go.
So they reached out, and we decided to do a show, and I was just happy to sell maybe a couple works. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know how it works over there. So I thought, well, if I can just sell maybe 1 or 2 works, that'll pay for the whole thing. Okay, great.
But how do you then transport? A lot of your works are large. Like, what's your largest pieces that you do?
The largest piece I've ever made is 30 feet by
30 feet?
Yeah. It was for, I'll tell you about that too. That was a great experience. That was for a company called Workday up in San Francisco. Wow. It was for a Gensler building on their a new campus that they were building. And that was a whole experience.
Okay, but I hijacked you. How do you get your very large works that I would think are fragile by the nature of what they're.
I have a great shipping vendor here. Yeah, Crater Shipper, Newport Pack and Crate, and they move everybody's art locally. And so because the pieces are not so deep, they're only 3 inches deep, because every piece I make, or at least the panel works is what we're always referring to, because and they're called surf panels, but we've since moved away from that.
Okay. And
so the panel works are all 3 inches deep. I just came up with kind of and they all have a specific kind of edge to them.
Okay.
And so they're all distinct. If you see my work, you'll know it's me.
Yeah.
And that just kind of turned into a thing. And we've done some rounded works and stuff like that now.
Okay. But you didn't have a problem with shipping all these things to Japan?
No, because they're relatively light for how big they look and feel. They're not that heavy. I think the heaviest piece, some of the larger 6x6s or pieces that are that large are maybe 40 pounds or something like that. So you can move them around, and they're pretty hardy.
So you went, and Ron Herman was in Tokyo?
Yes.
And you were thinking, like, if I sell a couple pieces, it'll pay for the trip, and I'll have a good life story to tell, and that's the most important thing. And how many did you sell?
All of them.
How many?
I think that was 16.
Oh my gosh.
I think.
Talk about being sent a sign that you're doing the right thing.
I know. There's a few of those. I've had a series of those moments.
I was going to say.
It was great.
Not to get all emotional.
But the night before the show, I brought my family over there, and so we're just happy to go. And I was freaking out.
All the siblings and your mom?
I brought my brother, Nelson, and my sister, I think, came with me, and my mom. And my mom and I got there the day before, and I love walking everywhere. And my mom is not a huge fan. And when they got there, she's like, he's like a slave driver. And I was like, we're just exploring the city. It's great.
This is so similar to my family, that my mom, rest in peace, passed away a long time ago. I think your dad might have already been passed when you had your...
Yes.
Yeah. But they would say that to me too, like, oh, we can't keep up with Steffi. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm not... But so just, I want to hear about that, but I just think of signs. And like, I think of your dad, who I never even met, but I just know that when big things happen, it's such a feeling to know, like, it just feels good to think like they're watching, they're somehow orchestrating this, involved in this.
Great moments. And I remember going the night before kind of the opening and stuff. And this is before I learned how kind of shows work in Japan too. And so I was kind of having a hard time, and I was over there helping him set up, and the installer, and the fellow was the best. It was so funny. Could barely speak English, but he and I just clicked, and he was this older man, and I was so obsessed with all of his perfect tools and his box and the whole thing, and the way that
the sense of order.
It was so cool.
Yeah.
And so I'm just having a night before, and my brother just shows up, and I just hear knocking on the window, and he has like a 6-pack of beers or what, and we just sat and just had a moment, and I just needed that at the time. So I really give him credit for being the icebreaker, and just he's like, it's gonna be great, like whatever. And so it all worked out, and that was the first event that we did over there, and we subsequently have done 3 or 4 or 5 shows over there, and then we got into other projects with other groups. And so but yeah, it was great.
That's so cool. Talk to me, completely unrelated to art, like hobbies when you're not creating art.
Okay.
Like, or something that might surprise somebody. Like
Okay.
when you say, like, I'm a chess champion.
Okay. I'm in the middle. I'm still in the middle of joining this club that my dad was a member of.
What is it?
Called Los Caballeros. It's a horseback riding club, and they get to ride on the island of Catalina.
Yep.
That's what makes them unique.
I'm very familiar with this group just because of friends who are members. And it just seems, again, to go back to like the nostalgia, the history, family history, a connection to your dad, like all those
very
things.
much so. So it checks all my boxes. Unfortunately, I am deathly allergic to animals.
Oh.
And so on the first ride, and you have to do several to get into the club and stuff. And so
Did you know this prior?
I did in high school. I had an allergic reaction at a party where the girls had horses in the back and in the back bed where they can have horses and stuff.
Yeah.
And we were playing with the horse, and my friends found me feeling out home, and my lungs were completely shut.
Oh, like it's not even just like an itchy rash allergy.
Oh, no,
like it's like anaphylactic potentially.
It just it gets very uncomfortable for me.
Wow.
So when we were on the first ride, I went over to this fellow that was kind of like let's say like your pledge master, like your what they call it, your gun soul mother. And
but I want to stop you for one second just to explain for people who don't know what Los Caballeros is, because you and I just do.
Yeah.
But it's like so horse...
there are these riding clubs throughout the country, and there's the Rancheros, which is a big national one.
Right.
The Portola ride. There's these rides that you know guys belong to, and
it's
they're
like
all walks of life.
Multi-day.
Yes, right. It's typically weeks long or whatever, and you know you do rodeos,
riding,
you do all sorts of the whole and
everything is horse related.
Yes, and there is a women's one, the Los Caballeros, and it's just an old timey thing, and I just liked it because I liked the camaraderie, and it was just kind of fun and totally different from what my buddies did and stuff, and so I had an opportunity to do it. But I walked up to this fella and I go, hey, if you see me fall off the horse, grab this pen and jam me in the neck with it. And he thought I was joking.
And you actually had an EpiPen
with you?
for
sure. Yeah, you had to. And so and he's like,
why? He's like,
why are you out here?
And
I was like, I just like being out here, man. I just like doing the thing. So, you know, I'm a terrible horseman.
This is so good.
So it's just, I like doing all that kind of stuff a little bit. Weirdly, a weird story about Dad was he in 96 or 95 bought his way into the rodeo business. So he was out in Las Vegas working on a project. And
what was his profession?
He was a developer.
Okay. Like commercial real estate?
No, like more housing and stuff like that. And he did multiple things throughout his life.
Right. Well, one of the things he did was real estate development.
Yeah. So that's why we spent a lot of time in Las Vegas and stuff.
Okay.
And so he was out with his buddies that were all these rodeo fellas, and he went to an auction and he bought a rodeo bull. And the rodeo bull at the time was the most ever bought.
I don't know what a rodeo bull is.
Oh, like what they ride in rodeos, like the
bull.
Yeah, bull.
Oh, I was thinking bull, like a sound bath
my
bull.
mom probably wishes that.
He bought a bull.
Yes, so he called my mom, and at the time it said some record, you know, that was clearly broken, but he bought this championship rodeo bull. And at the end of the night, they go, okay, Mr. Meehan, you won, you know, the bull or whatever. And he goes, well, I have some land down in San Juan. They're like, what do you feed these things? They realize he's not like a rancher.
Right, like he doesn't
actually. And so he goes, okay, keep the money, keep the bull. I just want to come and hang out. And so he like inadvertently got his way into the rodeo business, made really close friends with the Russells who provided all the bulls for like the PBR and stuff like that. And so they're great people, and we still have relationships with them. And it was just kind of this thing because my dad loved rodeo and he fancied himself a cowboy even though he really wasn't and stuff. Right. So we kind of had that attachment to it, and it was great.
I love that.
Yeah. So that was kind of part of the whole.
That's a good unexpected thing.
Yeah.
What about? Do you have something like an average? Not average, but a typical day?
Okay.
Or a morning routine or an evening routine? You can pick. I think we're probably running out of time soon.
Oh, sorry, guys.
I want to talk for like another hour. I have a million more questions for
you. I typically wake up really early, and then the first thing I do is get up and I go for a walk. So I walk Balboa Island every single day.
Are you with a dog? Or are you with just you
Well,
and
my
your
girlfriend
thoughts?
has a dog, and so typically when we meet up, she'll bring Huntley. And then I get up and I'll either go work out typically or go see mom, and then I go to the studio.
Okay.
Yeah. And then depending on the projects or what's going on, we have morning sessions and evening sessions.
Got it.
Yeah.
What about must-haves that you always have to have with you if you're traveling, if you're going to Japan, if you're going on your horse ride, besides the EpiPen?
I need to have my inhaler.
Yeah.
So that's it.
You're like my son Chandler.
Yeah, and sunglasses.
He always has to have an inhaler. Yeah.
Sunglasses, and I have an eye thing, so I have to always have sunglasses.
I have an eye thing too.
Yeah.
Tertium?
Penguiglium.
Oh, I don't know what that is.
It's a small growth, and eventually have to be removed. Yep.
I know about those things. Okay. Sort of rapid fire fun questions.
Okay.
If you could only paint with one color for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Okay, so I was thinking about this because somebody asked me recently. Okay, everybody likes blues, but I love yellow.
I knew you were
So
going to say
yeah, so
yellow.
like sunflower yellow is like my favorite.
I always think like
Blues,
taxi cab yellow, just
yeah,
that like
I don't know,
yellow.
but also I'm a black and white guy.
Yeah.
So like,
Right.
yeah, I don't know. That's a really
I
hard
think that
question.
people associate me with like strong color, and I mean, obviously I love color, but I have figured out that it's probably as much to do with contrast. I need high contrast energy. There's something about it.
Yeah.
Like, so if a room is neutral, I can love it, but I'm going to love it more if it's strong, dark to light.
But I'm also like I used to have in my old studios. I used to have a white room where everything was white. Everything, and it was very minimal. So it was like a Zen dojo,
Right.
so that you can just get ideas.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
there's
okay.
something weird. I went and saw a medium one time, and she told me
Oh,
that
I would
eventually
love to talk about
that
that.
I'm gonna do something with that, and
Well-
with like children and education and with creativity.
I'm like a highly suggestible human, so
Okay.
anytime anyone says anything to me, I believe it. And you saying that, I'm like, okay, well, that would make a lot of sense and sounds like a brilliant idea. But also, once I listened to a speaker, and I think I was wearing like some poochy, different shades of purple and black, which is funny because purple isn't even really my color that I love. Pattern top. And she was a very, very, very well-known, nationally, internationally known designer. And she was saying how she feels that spaces and rooms shouldn't have any color. It should be neutral so that it's calming. But because the people who occupy the spaces in what they're wearing or saying or doing are the energy and contrast that the rooms create. And that's when I was like, uh-oh, I think I'm doing it all wrong, because that also makes a lot of sense to me.
I wanted to ask you because I've always had this thought, and right now I don't, but I think moving forward, I'm always going to have an idea wall or something. So it's a project that I'd be working on that will only live at home. So only people that come over or that
Right.
interact with me on a personal level can kind of experience it, because people come to the studio all the time, but it'd be something that's a completely different style of work
Right.
that is just sitting there. So it's kind of a way to walk away from it, but live with it.
I think that's a brilliant
And whether
idea.
you're a designer or an artist, I think it's important to have some kind of rotating gallery wall that is specifically dedicated to new ideas, and
Right.
just so you can kind of play
I
around.
think that's such a good idea, and I don't do that. And even the things that I have thought about doing to help inspire, I just find myself running around too many different directions, too many hours of the day, which is not anybody else's fault except for mine. But I think as an artist, I think that would be a really great, healthy way to do things and look at things.
And also just a sense of calm, and I think that's kind of maybe the success that I've been able to have a little bit correlates with. I think my work and kind of my whole program is based towards a sense of calm, because life and everything can be really hectic and sad and intense. And so I'm drawn to things, I
Messy.
think, that extremely. And so I think that's why people like me really like just calming, sense of just chill and quiet.
Yeah. And you know what? Even that's really interesting, because even though I associate your work, I know you have all different styles, but the one that really, really speaks to me is like the color contrast. But I think, or I wonder if it still is creating a sense of calm because it's orderly.
Well, in a
It's
sense
not
of
chaotic at all.
in a sense of nostalgia.
Yeah.
And so maybe it correlates kind of like with that aesthetic aha was kind of based on why we do it, is just like an Adele song or something. It's the beats are so similar, but it's presented in a new way. So it's just enough of a brain tickle.
Right.
But then you feel familiar with it. So
Yeah.
it makes you feel good. And
I
so
love
I get
that.
phone calls or letters from, and it's my favorite thing in the world, from collectors where they go, it just makes me happy. And I
Yeah.
go, that's it. That's all I want to do.
Yeah,
you know?
exactly. Yeah, you're not trying to cure your cancer,
And I don't-
although I would love it if your art did too. But that someone can say to you that your work and something you've created makes them happy.
And that's all I
like,
want, because the world is hard and things are hard and noisy, and I'm not here to do low-hanging fruit and do something political or
No.
mean or whatever. I just think that's too easy.
Right.
And so like comedy's
Right.
hard. Drama, people can be dramatic and dramas are hard too, but being a good comic or making people smile and happy is hard.
Right.
And
It
so
is
I
hard.
think it's important.
I love that you're making me think about this, or letting me think about this. 2 last questions.
Okay.
If you weren't an artist, what would you be?
Okay.
It doesn't have to be realistic.
No, I know, but I feel like that's the easy. No, I don't know. I'd love to own like a hotel or something, or
Okay.
I restaurants or something. But at the same time, I know how hard that is.
Yeah, but I don't
So-
care. I feel like you could still say that because even though like there's lots of other ideas I could think
Uh-huh.
of, like, oh, I want to be a singer, but I can't sing. You can take all the buts out of it.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter if it's expensive or
No,
hard or
I
whatever.
don't know.
Do you think it's the idea of gathering people?
Yeah, and similar, I think that's a big reason why my sister and I do Meehan Studios and stuff, is giving people a platform to create.
Yeah.
So that's super important to us,
I
and
love
maintaining
that.
a presence in the artist village in Santa Ana.
I love that.
Because we just understand that, giving people resources as far as, money's always works, but people just need a space.
Yeah.
And so I think if you can do that and create a community
It's
and things like
brilliant.
that, it's just, no, it's important. And
Yeah.
so it just needs to happen more and more.
Right.
So I like that.
I love that. What's your definition of flair?
Oh, okay.
I feel like you are like a snapshot, like you just like physically, emotionally, all of it. You have so much flair.
Okay, you might agree to disagree. I think fashion
wrong
fashion is shit and style is everything kind of a thing.
Yes.
Where certain
Fashion
people
and
just
style
have
are not the same
style. No,
things.
they are not. And so I think when certain has style and flair is just how you carry yourself.
Yeah.
And I think it's also confidence. So sometimes you can have more flair, less
Yeah,
flair.
it depends on the day or the time of day.
Yeah.
I think that's a great answer. I really, I
So
love.
I guess it's confidence.
Even though I'm in design, I'm kind of obsessed with life design, and
Yep.
I feel like flair is as much a way a person lives their life, and you just check all the boxes.
Oh,
for
it's
me.
also spunk. When you meet somebody that's just, you gravitate toward them and you have a good energy and you're like, that's flair to me.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of people that, let's say on a lighter, like, there's still spark in the spark. And there's other people that are just a flame and you just want to be around them
Oh
more.
my gosh, I've never heard that, and I love that.
Yeah.
That's very good.
I think that's the deal.
Thank you so much
Thanks for having me.
sitting in traffic
there's
and
so
drive
much
up
more we
here.
can
So
chat
we have
about too, so
so
thanks
much
for
more to
having me.
chat about. I really appreciate it. Thanks,
Thanks.
Pierce.
Deal.
We're done. Hey, thanks for listening to today's episode of The Cult of Flair. I'm Stephanie Hunt. If you like what you heard, please share it with a friend. Follow the podcast on whatever platforms you are listening. Follow me on Instagram at The Flairhunter or at The Cult of Flair. And until next time, go find your flair.